City of Stevens Point Historic Preservation Design Review Meeting, recorded January 6, 2021.
So call to order the Design Review Commission meeting for January 6, 2021. It's 2 p.m. Roll call. Mr. Kuhn?
Siebert?
Here.
Jennings?
Here.
McComb? Scripps?
Here.
DeBush?
Here.
McFarland?
Present.
And Kamer. All right, I'll just start one last time. McComb? And Kamer. All right, looks like a quorum is established.
Okay. We are to be introduced to Ginger Kamer, but she's not on.
Yeah, she did say she was available, but yeah, I just wanted, if she hops on later on, we can maybe, during the staff update, we can introduce her. But I figured this was more so just to give a quick introduction of her, and if there's any, learn a little bit more about her rather, and then, if there's certain things that she's looking forward to as a commissioner, love to hear it. So, but we can just move on to the next one if she's not on yet.
Let's go on to number 3, minutes of the Historic Design Review Commission for November. Any comments?
I'll move to approve.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I'll move to approve.
Second, please.
Second that. Oops.
Okay, Mr. DeBush, thank you.
Go ahead.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Number 4, request from Judah Haas, representing Alchemy Concrete, for the demolition and design review to demolish an existing deck and construct a new patio, excuse me, at 1009 First Street. Staff has agreed to it with all the applicable stuff. Mr. Kuhn, you want to make any comments?
Sure, absolutely. I can give a quick rundown, and I do know that the applicant or one of the folks at Alchemy Concrete is on the call right now, but just to give a quick introduction, the applicant is requesting a demolition and design review to first demolish the existing deck that's located next to MEJ's and then to construct new patio space. So just to give a little background on the property itself, now the existing commercial tenant building was built in 1981, with the deck being built a few decades later in 2002. Now the deck is utilized for outdoor seating, and then there's also planters and fencing that surrounds the deck to more have it act as an enclosure. And then, as we'll see in some subsequent pictures, there is a 6-foot-high wooden privacy fencing that abuts the deck to its rear and then extends down towards the side yard property line. So just to give some aerial views and some ground level views, you can see this is the commercial building. MEJ is situated on the far western portion of the building, and then the deck being located right here. And then these are some street level views showing the planters and the fencing surrounding it, and then the 6-foot-high fencing abutting its rear and then heading down towards the property line, and then just another view along First Street showing the location. So some historic photos. So as I said, this building was built in 1981, and before that, it was utilized as a glass retail store selling glass and various types of paint products. So you can see, at least from the exterior architectural composition of the building, you can see back in the left picture on the left-hand portion of your screen, rather, is from 1980. So just before this new building, the existing building, was built. So you can see it has more of a raised brick appeal, where the building today is your pretty traditional stucco type appeal, as is consistent with most other types of buildings built during that time. Again, just to give an overview, so this is the proposal, the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. So you can see here is the existing building, which will be this corner right here, with the northern portion, if you're looking up, that's facing east, just to give a little perspective. So the proposal is to construct the upper patio and the lower patio with a step or steps separating the two. The upper patio will be located roughly where the existing patio is located now, and then the lower patio extending out a little bit further. So before I get to the demolition and the design review guidelines, talk a little bit about that. At least it serves the question to talk a little bit about the zoning side of things, just to bring everything into full picture. So as far as the location of any patios are concerned, the main indicator to determine where it can be located is based off of its height, meaning that what's the height differential from the bottom of the patio where you step relative to the adjoining ground. And if there is a height differential of 2 feet or greater, it has to be located within the setbacks. If it's less than 2 feet, it can be located within the setback requirements. So just to start now with the demolition guidelines. So the 3 that's shown on your screen are the applicable ones per the commission's design guidelines. So the first, whether the building or structure is of such architectural or historic significance that the demolition would be detrimental to the public interest or contrary to the general welfare, so on and so forth. So there's really 2 keys to keep in mind here. The first being that the deck is relatively new, at least in comparison to the building itself. Again, the deck being built in 2002, whereas the building was built in 1981. And then number 2, it's important to note too, as far as the use, the overall intent of this patio is going to be consistent with the existing use now for the deck, and that will be utilized for outdoor seating for any patrons of MEJ that's going to want to sit down, socialize, and enjoy their coffee. So going on to the design review guidelines. So the 3 that are most applicable are shown on your screen as well. And for the design guidelines, so patios are not explicitly mentioned within the design guidelines as far as how staff should review the construction of any proposed patios. Now, given patios and decking is consistent in terms of the review process, both on the zoning code, likewise, there's similar components on the building code side of things as well. Staff felt that it would be most applicable to use the deck guidelines within the commission's design guidelines for the construction, or for the review rather, of this patio space. So some of the one that stands out that I should note is that, so they have it here in the design guidelines, a deck should not be when visible, or when feasible, visible from the public right of way. And then the main kicker here is that the purpose of this new patio is contrary to, you know, the normal use, the normal function of a deck on a residential lot, right? So any decks that's situated in a residential lot are commonly found in the rear of the property, not visible from, or commonly speaking at least, visible from the rear of a lot. Now in this case, having patio space situated on the side of the building, part of that's also given, the purpose of that is also for the more so the commercial use of it as well, to help advertise and promote this location for the specific function of the building itself. So before I conclude here, I just want to discuss a few things about the site plan itself, as there are some notations on the site plan that are not going to be directly included within the scope of this design review currently. And the first of which is that myself and the applicant and the owner of MEJ's, we have been discussing potential fencing designs, because there is the intent of replacing the existing fence located on the rear here, and then replacing it most likely with a 6-foot high privacy fence as well. Now, per the commission's design review guidelines, that is considered more of a minor work that staff can review outright, which, as I'll show in some of the future slides, that is a condition, just making sure that if and when the applicant decides to replace the existing fencing, that it meets the applicable guidelines for the zoning code, and then also for the design guidelines for this commission as well. And then secondly, as you can see, noted by these 4 square blue blocks, that this is the rough location for a future shade structure that's it's being looked at by the owner, and then again, myself and the commercial building inspector assisting him as far as the applicable requirements for that. So that structure is not part of this design review request. There are some details that need to be worked out, but the applicant is aware that that will require the review of this commission. So if that would come into fruition in a few months, for example, expect to have the applicant come back here to review the structure component of this that will be mounted on the upper patio portion of it. So overall, staff does recommend the approval of the demolition and design review, subject to the conditions shown on your screen that the zoning code and building code requirements shall be met for the patio space. And then likewise, as I mentioned before, with the proposed fencing, and then seeking approval from this commission for any future construction of the shade structure. So with that, I can take any of your questions.
Anybody have any questions? I have one. If they reconstruct the fence for both patios, is that correct?
So the intent is to, should they replace the existing fencing, that would be situated roughly upon its same location, that it wouldn't extend out farther westward towards First Street. Now, if
It would not.
correct. Now, if that would happen down the road, if there would be some changes that would occur and if the property owner would be interested in that, then one of the outcomes that we would have to make sure is making sure it doesn't infringe on the property line, that any applicable clear view requirements are met. So, but correct, the location of it wouldn't change from where it's located existing.
I guess my concern was if it does extend the line of sight for traffic coming around the corner.
Yeah, and that's, that's a great question. So then that would fall within the realm of the clear view requirement as well, which is essentially a 10-foot right triangle, and that we would want to make sure that if there would be any fencing that is proposed, again, that's not the intent of the property owner right now, but if there is any, should that happen in the future, that would be the first thing that I would make sure is that there are no fencing proposed within that clear view requirement to ensure that any folks entering, leaving the parking lot, that there's going to be no visual obstructions as a result of that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions.
Sarah?
For Ginger?
Or Ginger, I'm sorry.
Am I free to start?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed in the packet that it mentioned the building was constructed in 1981. On the page 10 of the packet where it shows the two historic photos, that building on the left, the cinder block one, was that building demolished, or was it just like a facade addition that wrapped around the previous building? I guess I didn't understand.
Great question. So we don't have actual records from what I could look back as far as, floor plans, things of that nature of the old building. What we do know is that the picture on the left-hand portion of the screen was taken in 1980, and that was before the construction of the current building.
Okay.
So we know that this is a different building as far as, the shape of it, the overall size, things like that. We don't have, at least through my digging, any site plans, anything else that would show or denote the size of the previous building.
Okay, so it's not clear if the old building was demolished or not, or?
It was demolished to
Okay.
Make way for the existing building today.
Okay. And then my second question isn't really a historic preservation, I guess, concern. I was just curious about the bike rack and the new patio designs. It shows like it being, like currently they have the bike racks kind of where the lower patio would be. And I saw that in the new plans, they moved it kind of along the driveway side. It was like 4 feet. Would that be flush with the existing sidewalk, or would that extend further out into like where the current driveway is located?
So I can have the applicant speak to the second half of that because I know Mackenzie is on the call, but as far as the discussions that took place as far as mobility, one of the things that the applicant has been working on with the commercial building inspector is making sure that this area where the bike rack is, you can see in this picture, currently located, and then farther along to the east towards the building itself, to make sure that it's clear and of easy access for any handicap accessible patrons of MEJs, that they'll have easy mobility if they would want to leave from the parking stalls and then hook up onto the existing deck, the new upper patio as well. So the current bike rack would be located farther north, but staff doesn't have any concerns as far as traffic flow or that being hindrance for any pedestrians using the crosswalk or using the sidewalk along the building, and then, like I said, any vehicular traffic.
Okay, very good.
Did you want the applicant to make a comment, Mr. Kuhn?
If there's any, I guess if there's anything he wants to bring along or address, he's more than welcome to.
Adam, can you hear me?
Yes.
Adam.
Please introduce yourself, sir.
Oh, sorry. This is Mackenzie Payton with Alchemy Concrete. I'm the one that put the sketch together, and I'm the one that met Adam out on site, going over all the amendments and rules and basically any of the setbacks that was discussed. So Adam basically did sum it up pretty well. The bicycle parking will not extend farther out into the parking lot. It'll basically match the existing sidewalk going west, if that makes sense.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Payton or Adam? Okay, I would entertain a motion to accept the proposal.
I'll move to accept with staff recommendations. This is Sarah.
Sarah, thank you. A second, please. Ms. Jennings, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. That was number 4. Adam, have you got anything further for the commission?
As far as for this agenda item?
Yeah.
Not for,
No, for
number 4, no.
Staff comments? Roles and responsibilities?
Yep. Yeah, so what I wanted to start out with, and this will kind of be a good segue towards the next agenda item with the goal session, our goal setting sessions, is to give a brief rundown of the roles and responsibilities of this commission, which is ascertained on the city's website through the city's charter as well. And this is consistent with some of the past discussions that we've had amongst the Bicycle and Pedestrian Street Safety Commission, giving a brief rundown of what their charter is, their roles and responsibilities. And that's more of a general endeavor that this department is taking forward, as the director included in the memo, for any of the commissions, committees that the department staffs. So this slide sums up a plethora of different powers and duties that this commission has. So the first couple of ones are pretty consistent, which all the commissioners have done over the last few months and years, designating any historic structures or historic sites. So, for example, the Clark Street, that's a relatively recent one. For example, the regulation of construction, the reconstruction, the alteration, and demolition of structures. This would be consistent with any design review or demolition review request that comes before this commission. The expiration of a design review certificate. So if there's a condition that's placed upon any design review certificate that says that this certificate, it becomes expired after so many months. The common standard is that if the work is not completed, but the design review certificate is also expired, that the applicant would have to go back before this commission for essentially for reapproval. And then let's just see, jump in some of them here. The recognition of historic structures, sites, and districts, similar to the first one. The creation of a historic preservation plan. Now, this was something that was I was relatively interested in, because I can't recall if this commission has adopted a historic preservation plan over the last few years, and this would be a perfect segue, for example, for some of the goal sessions, should any commissioners have an interest in something like that. Working, and then the next few actually will be pretty good goals as well. Work for the continuing education of citizens about the historic heritage of the city and historic properties that fall within any of the city's historic districts. So focusing more on the education component, and likewise in a way with the encouragement portion of it as well. Then second to the last, focusing on making sure that it meets applicable state requirements as far as any historic guidelines, National Register of Historic Places, making sure that if there's any applicable properties or landmarks or things like that, that if there is a possibility of designating that as a state historic place or on the National Register of Historic Places, that would be, this commission would be the jurisdiction to go forward with that. And then lastly, as receive, solicit funds, which this would be consistent with the facade improvement grant program, as we've had a few over the last few months, and that if it meets the relevant guidelines within the facade improvement grant program, that property owners could be eligible to X amount of dollars of funds towards any approved work. So we just want to give a quick rundown of the powers and duties of this commission, as this would be, as I said, this would be a good segue for the next discussion that we have with setting some goals individually for this commission, and see what are some collective goals, some collective strategies that this commission should take going into 2021 and subsequent years thereafter. So I don't know if any folks had any questions or
I guess real quick, I can jump in just for a few other items I'd like to bring up to the commission. So as Adam indicated, this is something that community development is doing with a number of our committees that we staff. It's just become clear that a lot of times we need further direction from commissions or committees and what you want to see come out of the community development department. Whether it's the creation of policies or procedures or documents, things of that nature. And so we had just did this earlier in December with the Bike and Ped Street Safety Commission. And so we're actually going through their goals right now. But really, if you look at your agenda packets, page 25, the first part of the Historic Preservation Design Review Commission, there's 7 purposes and intents of what your commission is supposed to accomplish. And that's really something that as we go through the strategic planning goal setting session for this group, what we think you should really focus on. Those 7 items I think are broad enough in scope where if you have an idea, there's a good way that you can bring it back to one of these purposes and intents. And we'll go over that in a few moments, but Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions, Adam or I are more than happy to answer as it relates to the charge. But essentially, Chapter 22 is what regulates the governing of this body and how you folks enforce and establish Chapter 22 is pretty critical for the historic preservation of our community, especially in the downtown, our historical residential areas, in other parts of the community. So
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Knusky? Okay.
Yes, I have a question on the last, on the duties. I guess this is just a comment to Ryan, I guess, and to Adam. And I think of the 3 years that I've been involved in with the committee, we've never been involved in the designation of a structure as being historical. We have, and Tim, you have far more experience with this. My impression is we've only dealt with structures that have been already designated within the historical plans and zones. And so to me, that seems much more proactive as a committee than what I've experienced in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, you're right. We've dealt only with the buildings themselves, not with getting them on the historic register or any of that sort of stuff. One of the things I suggested to Mr. Kuhn was to develop some sort of brochure, pamphlet, whatever, where we talk about each of the buildings and the historical relevance of each building, which I talked to Kyle about that some time ago. The problem was money, because it would take some time to hire somebody to do the work and then to print it. But I think that would, in terms of education, that would greatly enhance the look of downtown and people being interested in the buildings themselves.
So that's a really good point. So I don't know if you don't have a copy of the green brochure, Gateway to the Pineries. Tom Brown did this in the late 80s. And this has kind of been our Bible, if you will, of downtown buildings. And when we do review of those buildings, I think it's worthwhile, and something that I've talked with Kyle about and Adam as well, that maybe this is a good time for us to update this. Bring some newer historical context to it. A lot has changed since 1988. And so I think it's worthwhile. And that's one thing as we go through the goal setting, that also allows city staff in the next budget cycle to start requesting funds for those types of updates. Because without that direction, a lot of times we go 30 some years without getting an updated pamphlet. So. And if anybody needs a copy of this, please let me know. I'm more than happy to. I've got plenty in my office.
This is Mary McComb. We also have that inventory that was done. I think his name was Timothy Hegeland from the State Historical Society that has a lot of good information about. I mean, it has individual structures in there. So that's another good resource, I think.
Yeah, and then go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please. Sorry.
Mr. Konofsky, do you have that that she's talking about?
I believe Commissioner McComb's talking about when we did the Clark Main Street district boundary. Is that correct?
Nope. I'm going back to this. I think was okay. I'm looking for it on my computer. I've got it on a PDF.
Okay.
Is it the 2011 survey report?
I'm looking up the.
I think that's what she's talking about. Yes.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Should be on your screen right now. 165 by Timothy Hegeland.
Yeah, that's a very, very thorough and valuable piece of work.
Perfect.
Yeah, I had a question for that when Mary's done with her comment.
Pardon me, I'm done talking.
Okay,
Go
this
ahead.
is
Go ahead.
I haven't read through this entirely. I just kind of glanced through, but my big question looking through it as a unit was, has this information been mapped? Like because it lists all these different addresses that are characteristic of certain types of building styles, or and it just seems like it would be very helpful to have a visual documentation of this map, like, and where these houses are clustered. At least in terms of if you're looking at proposing new districts or coming up with arguments for why certain districts are located where they are, just seeing, the geographic locations of them. So yeah, that was my question.
And that's kind of what was done in that brochure that Mr. Karnowski has, but it needs to be expanded. Yeah, that thing, the green one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think having the green one is a good base. The 2011 update as an update, we can really start creating a new document in which we look at historic buildings, not only in the downtown, but in the city as a whole, including Wendell Nelson's book, Houses That Grew. That's also a really important piece of our history, because a number of those homes have actually been demolished, especially those in the downtown area when the mall was constructed or when the hospital was expanded. And so trying to get some of that information in there as well. So instead of having 5 or 6 different places that all this information is located, having one central location with a map that's linked to each individual property would be worthwhile for us to explore. So another thing that maybe we want to look at doing for 2021 and 2022, putting some of that information together.
So, Mr. Kuhn, is this kind of what you want to talk about next month?
Well, this would actually be a perfect segue for the next agenda item where we can talk further about the goal setting sessions, discussing what are some potential goals, if it's more materialistic in nature, if it's more, things like that. But yeah, I mean, if there's any, I don't know if there's any further questions first about the powers, duties, scope of the commission, more broadly speaking.
Anybody have any comments? So then let me just clarify for myself here. The February meeting would be for this goal setting then? Is that your suggestion?
So if you're okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll do a quick overview of kind of what city staff is hoping that we can do over the next few months.
Sure.
I know this is kind of a weird because we're talking about, some of the ideas I think that you folks already have in terms of what goals we can establish for this next few years. But, what we've done is provide an overview of the role of the commission in the larger context of the community. And I think a lot of the folks on this commission have a great understanding of what historic preservation and what your role is. But I think it's worthwhile, especially you have a new community development director, you've got a new associate planner. It's important that we all are able to understand the role of this commission moving forward. And then what we're asking is that you review the Chapter 22 and start brainstorming some ideas individually that you'd like to see done as it relates to goal setting. And then if you look in your agenda packet, starting on page 40, we actually break down a goal setting worksheet. This is pretty basic, but what's your goal? One of the goals, I know that we've talked about this quite a bit, is establishing a demolition by neglect ordinance. And that's actually something that city staff is working on right now. So your goal, using that as an example, might be establish a demolition by neglect ordinance. How does this goal fit into the overall charge of the commission? You would look at it and say historic preservation, ensuring that private property owners are properly maintaining historic homes. That's an important piece of what this commission is trying to achieve and what the goal is overall. What steps need to occur to achieve the goal needs to be reviewed by city staff, brought back to the Historic Preservation Commission for final approval, and then go through the proper procedures of getting it approved through the city council. Who should work on that? So the who, what, when, where, and whys, city staff, of course, and whomever on the commission that has an interest in drafting that kind of ordinance. And then what are your timelines? What often happens is we have some of these lofty goals and people or commissioners would like those goals addressed within a shorter amount of time than is typically reasonable. When we do goal setting, it is worthwhile to go out 5 years. If we look at doing a whole new inventory of historic structures in the city, as an example, that would likely take us a minimum 2 to 3 years to do. And a lot of that has to do with budgeting, going out, finding someone who's qualified to go through it, or just city staff time in general. We can take a lot of the information that already exists, but compiling it amongst other duties that we have through city staff may take longer than 3 to 6 months. So, and then any other notes that you wanted to provide to us would be beneficial. There's, I think, 5 overall goal setting worksheets. If you want to do more or fewer, that's a-okay. And don't feel obligated to, write these in and mail them into my office. If you want to email them to Adam and I, we're more than happy to review that. And then what your city staff is going to do is take the information that you've provided us and find commonalities between everything. So there might be 2 or 3 commissioners that want something similar, and then bringing that back and establishing that as one of the long-term goals of the commission. And we would bring that up at the February meeting where we look at those consistencies and commonalities between everything. And then finally in March, we'd bring back a final document essentially saying these are the goals and the objectives and some of the strategic planning that we want to do for historic preservation. And at that meeting, you folks would review the document, you would approve the document, and that would be a guiding force for your city staff and for this commission the next several months. And then through the next year or two, we would also provide updates at the staff level. Where are we at in the creation of a historic inventory workbook? Where are we at with the creation of a demolition by neglect ordinance? And so that's really what we're trying to do. I know this is kind of sprung upon you, but take the next 2 to 3 weeks, review everything, have some internal reflection of what you believe that this commission's role should be and some of the goals and objectives that you'd like to see established and what you'd like to see come out of this commission. And then send that back to city staff, and we'll bring that back to the commission as a whole so we can review.
Now, I do have a question. So Kim, of course, is the head of the Historical Society. I'm affiliated with the History Department, and I know other members of this commission are sort of, connected to the community in various ways. Do you want us to reach out to our respective entities if there are ways that there would be connections with that and kind of serve as proxy representatives for affiliated, entities in the city, or would you rather us just kind of wear a strictly commissioner hat when filling out these forms?
I think it's worthwhile to bring in others as well. When you were talking a moment ago, I was thinking, how unique would it be to have some students from UW Stevens Point who are interested in local history provide some of the assistance in the rewriting or the inventorying of historic structures in the city. So if that's something that you think is worthwhile for the commission to bring forward as one of our goals or objectives, I think that's worthwhile.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we do actually, there is a course that is taught at the upper level that is called Historic Preservation, which might be a good place to start. So I'll talk to the person that teaches that class, as well as Kim, probably outside of this meeting. But thanks, I appreciate it.
So we're not looking for any action tonight. If you would take the information, watch this video again. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Associate Planner Kuhn. And if you're able to provide those goals and objectives back to your city staff by January 22nd, that's going to give us enough time to start identifying those commonalities and bringing it back to the commission for further consideration as well.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Karnowski? Or Mr. Kuhn, for that matter? Okay, staff update, Adam?
I don't have any staff updates at this time. Director, do you?
No.
No, things have been very busy in community development. We've got I think some really unique opportunities that the council is going to be reviewing for some of our historic structure, one of our historic homes in the city, hopefully next week. So excited to see where that goes. I can't get too much into it, but I think this commission will like to understand what's going on as we get further into those negotiations with the specific developers. So we'll keep you posted.
Okay. Mr. Kuhn, did you want to go back to number 2, introducing our new member?
Yeah, so I put this on the agenda mainly since we have a new commissioner. I felt like it would be a good time to, if the commissioner wants to introduce us. let us know a little bit more about herself. If there's any certain, goals or things you're looking forward to as a member of this commission, we're happy to hear it, not only for staff level purposes, but so all the other commissioners as well get to know you a little bit more. So the floor is yours.
Okay, am I the only new member?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Ginger Keemer, and my husband and I moved to Stevens Point about 7 years ago. So prior to that, we've been all over the country. So I've never lived anywhere longer than 4 years until we moved to Point. So it's kind of exciting. It's our first home. And yeah, we live on Lincoln Avenue near the Jefferson Elementary School and St. Joseph's Parish. And I grew up in an old house. We bought an old house. I love the old homes in our neighborhood, and I'm excited to work with the commissioners and work with the community on protecting and preserving those buildings. My professional background is as a public and academic librarian. So I did graduate school at UW-Madison, which is the only other town I've lived in besides Point in Wisconsin. I'm from Michigan originally. And yeah, I spent about 10 years in public and academic librarianship before my kids were born. And since then, I've been working part-time. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're looking forward to working with you.
Mr. Kuhn, anything further?
Nothing further, Chairman.
Anything from anybody on the board? Okay, it is, 2:40? I think we can adjourn for today.
All right, take care, everybody.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.